Significant things happening in the city of Tshwane. And to analyse it all for us, we're now joined in studio by Angelo Fick, who's the Director of Research at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute. Angelo, thanks very much indeed for joining us. This is quite significant, isn't it, what we've heard today? And a by-election means a rerun of 2016.
Well, a rerun of the election for the entire municipality, which of course, requires one, the logistics to be put in place, and two, for the IEC to get involved, and for three, the parties to play the role that they're expected to play in election campaigns and election running. I think what makes this more sort of slightly baffling is that this is the capital, this is the administrative capital of the country. So this is a symptom at the symbolic level of what is the deeper malaise in South African politics, that party imperatives seem to have overrun the actual imperatives of the citizenry on whose behalf people are elected to govern. And this is a similar crisis to the one that we saw that ended up in the Constitutional Court, where Chief Justice Makhura had to remind people that they took an oath of office to abide by the Constitution and put the Constitution and citizens before party loyalty. And what I think we're seeing in Tshwane is what happens when that isn't actually what happens in the chambers, on the ground, for councillors.
Some people might say, look, what we've been seeing for months now can't carry on, and that in the end, the Premier had to do something.
Yes, so we cannot have, in large metropolitan areas, a kind of stymied government where people aren't able to do their jobs, can't make decisions, and things hang around. The service delivery challenges in a place like South Africa are such that if we had had a civil service that was not related to party loyalty and party cadres, what we would have had is governance continuing while the political squabble happens in the chamber. Examples of that include the Netherlands and Belgium. In South Africa, once the party system kicks in the way that it does, what you see is a failure to deliver, a failure to reach out, a failure to solve problems that actually are urgent because they're not a matter of just balancing the books. There are people who don't have water. There are services around sanitation that are not being delivered. There are changes when you have political party changes that undo the decisions made before for longer term transformation of South Africa's city landscapes and town landscapes. That then means that the actual change of the dynamic of our spaces where we live, that's delayed. So spatial integration is delayed. A variety of other services are, that are crucial to changing the landscape of life for South Africans, that gets delayed. And I think there it is a great risk for any political party to continue to rely on the patience of ordinary South Africans.
Talking about the patience of ordinary citizens, who's likely to be the biggest beneficiary of a by-election now? We've seen the EFF working together with the ANC, perhaps to trigger what we've seen now, this by-election and putting the municipality into administration. Who's likely to benefit the most post this by-election?
I can't predict who's likely to win such a by-election, but I think the gain will be felt by the African National Congress. It has the strongest on-the-ground machinery for, should we say, electioneering of the three major contenders. In by-elections over the last few years, it has, particularly over the last few months, it's outperformed the Democratic Alliance, even in places where it wasn't that strong. And that's partly because the hard work on the ground to get people to go out and vote for them continues apace. I think what is truly kind of shocking is that this is a year before we're going to have actual local government elections, and this is happening in the capital of the country. That's a point I wish to reiterate. The administrative processes are such that I cannot imagine that the bigger winner out of this, whether they win the by-election or not, is the African National Congress, because the Democratic Alliance will be going through a leadership contestation over the next 90 days. The economic freedom fighters know themselves to be kingmakers, and as we've just heard from Julius Malema, has a certain view of how coalition politics should work, which is not how it's worked in South Africa, as we've seen with the collapse in Nelson Mandela Bay and other places. That coalition politics requires a certain kind of will to compromise, which I think is very difficult for some people, given that their loyalties are split between the Constitution and party.
Will the EFF still have the Kingmaker power after this by-election, do you think?
That depends entirely on how electioneering happens and how successful the two bigger parties are at getting their supporters to come out and vote for them. If, once again, there isn't an outright majority, it will be to parties like the EFF to either push people into an actual majority through a coalition, or to provide them with sufficient minority, but then you sit back where you started. You did not pass begin, you did not collect the 200 rand, and you're possibly sitting on free parking and getting nothing done.
And I suppose that this is an audition for next year, so that if the ANC comes out trumps at the end of this by-election, they have a year to convince the electorate, who are now probably trying to figure out, what does this all mean and what should I do with my vote?
Yes, and it's not just the kind of audition for the African National Congress should they win. It's also going to be, if they do not win, an audition for the Democratic Alliance and its governance partners should it form a coalition to get things done. But getting things done in the system that we have in South Africa is not as easy as that. Simply because you've been voted into power doesn't mean that the people on the ground, who may not be in your party but work in the service of government, can actually stymie your ability to deliver. Whereas if we had a professional civil service, what we would have is this business would continue and the political battle would happen somewhere else. Mampili Rampile and Jabula Ndebele have pointed to these shortcomings in the South African local government system in the early 2000s. I don't think it's as easy as implementing the professionalization of public service overnight, but it is something to begin to think through, that we shouldn't have cadres deployed because for whatever party, because the consequences are that when you have some kind of political party change, the people who are employed at the lower levels can stymie service delivery in all sorts of really unpleasant ways that do not work in the service of ordinary citizens who require those services for the actualization of their human rights.
All right, Angelo, I wish we had more time, but unfortunately not on our side. Thanks so much for joining us. Your insights always greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right.